Good evening. Tonight we turn to two critical stories exposing both U.S. military upheaval at home and Israel's continuing crimes in Gaza. In Washington, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has summoned hundreds of top generals to Quantico for what he calls a lecture on the warrior's ethos. But behind the scenes, the Pentagon is bracing for possible purges, demotions, and a culture of fear unlike anything seen in decades. And in Gaza, fresh revelations from Reuters have shattered Israel's narrative about its deadly attack on Nasser Hospital last month. Evidence shows Israeli forces knowingly destroyed a Reuters camera, killed journalists and shelled rescuers, exposing once again Israel's systemic targeting of the press and civilians. I'm Ann Morsi, and this is In Focus. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered an unprecedented mass gathering of America's top military brass, around 400 generals and admirals from across the globe, to hear him speak for less than an hour at Marine Corps University in Quantico. The subject, warrior ethos. But inside the Pentagon, alarm is spreading. Hegseth has already sacked senior officers without cause, rebranded the Pentagon as a Department of War, and imposed cultural edicts like banning transgender service members. Now many believe the Quantico meeting could be the stage for mass firings or demolitions, rather demotions. The logistics alone are staggering. Millions of taxpayer dollars for emergency flights, hotels, and disrupted missions. Critics argue this spectacle wastes resources while U.S. forces face mounting threats from Russia, China, Israel's war in Gaza, and growing instability in the Middle East. Some even compare it to authoritarian tactics of the past, calling generals into a hall to demand loyalty. What does this event mean for the U.S. civil-military relations, for America's role abroad, and for the stability of a Pentagon now overshadowed by fear? Joining us from New York is Professor Pranaka L. De Silva, a political science professor, to help us analyze the implications of this extraordinary summons. Professor, what do you make of the scale and the secrecy behind the sudden orders to gather hundreds of generals?
Yes, so the wisdom among senior officers who are looking at this is that this is probably, and here we can only kind of speculate because we don't know the exact details, but it is probably to find out the levels of loyalty for the Trump administration and for President Trump within the top brass of the US military. And the reason for trying to figure that out is because we are coming to the midterm elections next year in November. Mm-hmm. The Trump administration has deployed, the Guard, but there are laws.
But he came out with a tweet or a post on social, on Truth Social, basically saying that that he's directing the Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to provide the necessary troops to protect the quote war-ravaged Portland from the Antifa protesters and use any force necessary. Isn't this a threat? An internal threat in the U.S.
Yes, definitely, it's an internal threat for democracy in the United States, and I think what they want to figure out is whether members of the top brass will stand by them, contravening U.S. law, which posse comitatis, which actually doesn't allow U.S. military to get involved in policing the United States, the country itself and its citizens. So if they are actually, I think it's an attempt to fly a kite and see whether, what will happen. I don't think even Hegseth or President Trump have a clear idea which way the top brass, U.S. military top brass, are going to, roll with this. So it'll be a very interesting attempt, but I think it's also creating antipathy among the very senior, U.S. military officers, generals and admirals, who have been called to come at short notice for, as you said, a meeting for an hour or a little less than an hour.
Well, I mean, some of the officials in the U.S., government have compared what's happening as authoritarian Nazi Germany in the 1930s. Do you think this is an exaggeration, or is the U.S. actually headed towards a more authoritarian system?
I think it's baby steps. The Trump administration is trying, but I think Trump and the Republican Party know that unless something drastic is done, they are going to lose hands down, most likely, in the midterm elections, which would scupper President Trump's, dictatorial executive orders, etc., etc. So I think they are trying a year in advance of the November midterm elections to see how far the the Trump administration can use the military, whether they can or whether they cannot, and what about the top generals and those who are not loyal will be fired most likely.
Well, now, how dangerous is it that political leaders interfere in military hierarchy? And as you said, there's a good chance that a lot of the top brass are going to end up being fired.
Yes, so for my interactions with the top brass, 4 3s, 2 1-star military officers, I have always found, and especially at West Point, that the U.S. military is by and large nonpartisan. They may have their personal preferences, but they leave it, at home when they serve. So the fact here is that an executive and his, enabler, Pete Hegseth, is trying to see whether they can get or sway or persuade or force the top brass to support them if they make a move against, say, for example, God forbid, not hold the midterm elections next November.
Well, what kind of message does this send to, the traditional U.S. allies that, the top government officials are interfering in the U.S. military, and obviously, the Western partners are seeing that America is heading towards a more authoritarian leadership?
Yes, so this Quantico meeting is something that is of concern to, especially to the European allies and also the United Kingdom. So, but there is a huge chasm that has opened up, a transatlantic chasm between the US administration under Trump and his erstwhile allies. And actually, the Europeans and the British are actually going their own way and not relying on a mercurial, untrustworthy Trump administration.
Okay, Professor Pranaka L. De Silva, thank you so much for your sharp analysis on this unprecedented Pentagon gathering. And as Washington wrestles with questions of loyalty and military power, the world's attention remains riveted on Gaza, where Israel's war has shattered every boundary of international law. A new investigation from Reuters has revealed shocking details about the Nasser hospital attack, exposing Israeli lies and its deliberate targeting of journalists. This is not just a war on Palestinians, it's a war on truth itself. In Gaza, the truth once again exposes Israeli lies. A Reuters investigation has dismantled Israel's official account of its August 25th strike on Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. The attack killed 22 people, including 5 journalists. Israel claimed it was targeting a Hamas camera. In reality, the camera belonged to Reuters, covered by a prayer rug belonging to journalist Hossein al-Masri, who was killed in the blast. Even worse, 9 minutes after the first shelling, Israeli forces struck the same stairwell again, killing more journalists and wounding rescuers carrying Masri's body. Evidence shows Israeli troops attacked without proper command authorization, violating even their own rules of engagement. This is not an isolated incident. Since October 2023, at least 201 journalists have been killed by Israel across Gaza, Lebanon, and the West Bank. Not one case has seen accountability. From Shireen Abu Akleh in 2022 to Hussam al-Masri in 2025, Israel's war on the press is systemic, a war on truth itself. Joining us now from Cairo is Ibrahim al-Darawi, a writer and political analyst, to examine how this hospital attack and the killing of journalists reveals a deeper reality of Israel's campaign in Gaza. Thank you, sir, for joining us. So firstly, let's start off by asking now, Israel claimed that the Nasser hospital strike targeted Hamas, yet Reuters has just recently proved the camera belonged to one of its own journalists. What does this say about Israel's credibility in this war and the narrative?
I'd like to assert Israel that Israel lies from the very beginning. The war, as Netanyahu said in closed room chambers. He said that what happens in the media is the most important thing for the Israeli side, and he considers that the war is a deceit he practices by media. But thank God our media started to transfer the clear imaging to the West, and killing journalists for affiliated to UN to international media press is the biggest proof. So we are talking about more than 200 journalists killed in more than 2 years. I think the Second World War didn't witness the killing of this big number of journalists. The world wars that was witnessed didn't have or include the killings of all this number of journalists. They want to suppress any voice against them. By the way, the Israeli side, some of their soldiers acknowledged their intention, their deliberate killing to journalists, and Shireen Abu Akleh is the clearest evidence to this. So a few years when in the West Bank we addressed just some invasion in West Bank, but today we're talking about systematic genocide, systematic killing by the Israeli operation. So they don't want a journalist transferring the truth.
Yes, you were saying this is intentional and it's a tactic that the IDF uses. Now, journalists were clearly visible in the stairwell, according to the Reuters report, yet the IDF still fired tank shells at them. And not just that, they double-tapped it, which is illegal under international law. What does this reveal about Israel's attitude towards the press and towards civilian safety and international law?
I think that Benjamin Netanyahu, when he addressed this at the UN, he was also trying to deceive the West public opinion. They were trying to target Hamas, but Reuters cleared that as wrong. And unfortunately, the US backs this, and they're the one justifying this to Israel. So therefore, the international community and civil society organizations have to have clear vision on how to administrate this file. I think this file makes Benjamin Netanyahu and his government and under the pursuit of ICC. I think the journalists that have been killed in Gaza, their organizations, their agencies have to file cases against against Israel. Israel is now being supported by the U.S. completely. So the U.S. have to be pursued to kill those journalists.
But, sir, as you said there, the U.S. is complicit, but it's not just the U.S. that's complicit. Western media has also been complicit for the last few years, and it's only recently that the tide has turned, where, agencies such as Reuters, AP, and even, private channels and others have often whitewashed and softened Israeli crimes. Now their investigations are turning against Israel. How do you interpret this dramatic shift and tone towards the Israeli crimes?
Let us say that anyone is opposing Israel now, even if they provided all the services previously to Israel. So as long as you are not with Israel as all the way long, so you are targeted by Israel. I think Reuters has a real crisis with the reality they live. The credibility of organizations are on the brink. So now organizations, there are many organizations by their Israeli investment, their reputation have been thrown to the wall, so they have to return once more. We're talking about the American youth that was assassinated in a rally as a Israel support. When he became a burden to Israel, Israel completely got rid of them. Israel is getting rid of their allies if they opposed it. So all press agencies see that their credibility have to have clear vision to it, to transfer the image if it's real. So I think civil society and Israel especially rejecting this transferring this clear image. That's why they target they target press agencies. The
Israelis have always claimed or dismissed attacks as mistakes, often with their crimes like Hind Rajab and killing these journalists. In your view, how can the Palestinians and the international community hold the Israelis accountable and not bury their crimes with these silly excuses?
Atrocities will not drop with time. International crime, the international community, and the ICC. I think every citizen was assassinated has the right to pursue Israel. So this is why Israel started to be hostile to other countries, that their people started to ask their leaders to be neutral and not to support this genocide. What happened in Doha is that it was a mediator. They said that what Israel is doing is wrong, and they want to foil the agreement, so they attacked it immediately. So I think the US this time started, the international community was managed to spit on Israel when they left Netanyahu address an empty room. This is a historic moment for that Arab leaders and other delegations left the room. This is a real punishment to Benjamin Netanyahu, and I think legal cases have to be filed against Netanyahu himself and all of his leaders, because this influenced him. This time he toured the whole world to attend the UNGA. Today, now the diplomacy,
your point there, sir, is clear that Netanyahu is slowly being shunned from the international community. That was Ibrahim Ad-Darawi. Thank you so much for your insights. This investigation proves what Palestinian journalists and human rights defenders have been saying all along. Israel targets truth, silences witnesses, and kills indiscriminately. But as the evidence mounts, so too does the case for justice. What we saw tonight reveals two truths: a U.S. military shaken by authoritarian impulses at the very top, and an Israel exposed as a state that wages war not only on civilians, but on truth itself. History's watching, and as the lies crumble, whether in Washington or Gaza, the demand for accountability grows louder. Justice delayed may be justice denied, but it cannot be silenced forever. This has been In Focus. Thank you for watching.